Quick introduction about myself. I'm the founder and CEO here at TARS. We are an AI agent builder platform for primarily for customer service and customer acquisition use cases. So we would be working with mid-sized and enterprise customers who primarily use TARS to automate customer interactions. Scott has been a long time user of our product. He has seen TARS evolve from being a structured chatbot platform about 6, 7 years back. And he's been an active user of the platform. The last time Scott and I spoke was about 6 months back. Scott is an enterprise solutions architect at Devonport City Council in Australia. So it's evening for him, and then that's why it's an odd timing as well. But we have to manage with the time zones. Uh, the last time we spoke, Scott, you had built the first version of Mersey, the travel AI agent. It was still in its nascent stages, as I would put it. And over the last 6 months, you've done a lot of work with custom tools and the new features and functionalities we've been releasing. And I think you and I were chatting about a few weeks back, and you were telling about how you've been able to make a lot of progress. And I was like, hey, why don't you come and share what you've been doing with the rest of the audience as well, right? So that's a little bit of context. Scott, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks so much for doing this, by the way. And sharing your learnings and insights. It's super early, for everyone in the whole agent space to be building such complex production ready deployments, and you're one of the very early folks out there, especially in government, to be doing this, right? So over to you, and then I'll let you take over and explaining what you've done and your insights and challenges building that.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
So just a bit about me again. I'm an enterprise solutions architect. I've worked at Devonport City Council for almost 7 years. I've got dual degrees in criminology, criminal justice, and business management. I personally run one of the largest tourism sites in Devonport, which Mersey is part of. And I've seen more of Italy than I have seen of my home country of Australia. So just a bit of background, the Devonport City Guide. Devonport City Guide is the largest tourism site in the city of Devonport. It consists of a website which provides a directory for local places, events, guides, and reviews. We offer a trip planner feature where people can add sort of places and events into their trips and share with their friends and family. It allows businesses to submit their own businesses to get their own listings, and they're soon going to be able to submit their own events. We've got Mersey via AI chatbots, and they can also book flights and hotels through affiliate partners. We also have an Android and iOS app, and Mersey is heavily embedded in our app with its own dedicated tab. Recently we've just launched the brand new Devonport City Guide website, and from this website, we separated each of our data types into their own separate databases. They are places, events, travel guides, and reviews, and this has been very helpful in the new version 2 of Mersey using custom APIs and tools. So Mersey today, Mersey is a travel agent for the city of Devonport. He's actually a little lighthouse. I don't know if you know this, but Devonport has an iconic lighthouse, and his actual character is based off the lighthouse. He provides helpful information on places and events. He's able to engage with the community, so you can actually have a conversation with him, and it sounds like he's engaged. He'll ask follow-up questions, and he can then collect further information. And he's able to understand context and dates. So if you were to say something like tell what's happening this weekend, he'd know the date and then look for events that actually match the dates of this weekend and then come back with a list. So you're getting usable sort of information. So going on to Mersey version 1. So Mersey was very simple to begin with. We used TARS as web knowledge base tool. So what would happen is a user would go in and greet, or the chatbot would, Mersey would go and greet the user. The user would ask a question, and then it would simply go and pull information out of this knowledge base in TARS. And it was a very static knowledge base, and it got very confusing for Mersey to actually try and pull out usable data. And these are some of the issues we sort of had. So the web crawler had to be manually activated, and I found it a bit tiresome to keep activating when we added new content. And by introducing a self sort of help feature for businesses and events, it just wasn't feasible to go in every time a new listing happened and click a button to sort of retrain it. The data wasn't live, and the data was mixed and not sanitized properly. So if I were to ask a question about an event, and let's say I've got an event page, and then I've also got an article that mentions an event, it started getting confused between the two because there was no clear separation of the data. It was just sort of all thrown together. And that just added to sort of like a poor user experience. It wasn't able to answer certain questions. And yeah, it wasn't something that I was happy with. And then sort of going on to try and improve Mersey, the decision was made to actually rebuild a website from ground up. And that's where we sort of siloed all our data into our own databases. So Mersey 2, using custom tools, and we couldn't really do this until version 2 got released. This is actually what the back end of my TARS database looks like, and it looks sort of very simple. But when you drill into the data or into the actual sort of like structure, this is what Mersey is. So this is the flow. So the user opens the chat box. Mersey will actually greet the user. The user will then ask its question, and then the Mersey takes that question and then will make the decision on what tool to use. So we've got 3 custom tools. We've got a place tool, event tool, and travel guide tool. The place tool, if you're asking about a place, so you could say, is this business open? It will go and make the decision. It's a place tool. It will then go and send an API call with that business name and what you're looking for. So let's say business hours. It then goes to a Supabase edge function, and then that edge function is actually programmed to then go and pull out the date of the current date and time. And then it then goes and actually searches the data of a place database. It will then look at that place, pull out the opening hours, and a little bit more information, depending on what we're requesting. And it'll actually send it back to TARS. And then TARS will then see the date of the current date, and then the date it's opened, and then it will then about to then respond saying, this business is currently closed, or this business is open. And if it's closed and the function makes that decision, it will actually send back when it opens up next. So then it actually tells me when to actually come and visit the shop. Similar to events, so if I said to it, what's on this weekend, it will go off and say, I'm looking for events. I'm looking for ones on this weekend. The function's designed to actually work out what the date range is for the weekend using the current date, does the search, and it'll actually send back a list of events happening for that date range. And then Mersey will then come back and say, here are the events on this weekend. So you can see here it's clearly structured. There's no confusion between any of the data. And it's actually because of the sort of the magic in the back end, it's actually providing usable a good experience for the user. The data's usable, it's providing good tourist information. And I might just close this and I'll show a bit of a demo just to give you an idea. So this is the Devonport City Guide website. I could ask it something like, is Coles currently open? Coles is a local, a national supermarket in Australia. It should be going to the Play Store now. And yes, Coles is currently open. Here are the details. So it's telling me how to contact them, what the opening hours are. And then if I went to then go and ask it like what is happening, we'll say tomorrow. It's now gone and telling me that I've got 1984 by George Orwell on at the Town Hall Theatre. And then it's also giving me a link to actually register or buy tickets. Um, and I think just provide some basic text, if that, because it'd get confused. So it would see the date, but it had no idea what the date is. So it would then come back with 3 or 4 other events which happen either in the future or have already happened. Now it's actually providing usable data which tourists are going to be looking for.
Yeah. So I know just one question, Scott,
Yeah.
like how have you configured it in the backend for it to know which tool to be using for which question, right? So for instance, what is happening tomorrow is a very open-ended generic question. Should the agent be using a travel guide tool, or should it be using the place tool or the events tool? How does it figure that piece out?
So I'll just actually bring up my dashboard and I can show you the thing. The thing. Oh no, I have to go back. So let's go to event tools. So these are sort of the instructions. It's been a while since I've gone. I'm just trying to work out how to get back. I've got a big bar blocking my screen.
No problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. Get places. So this is an example. So this is the description I've given it. So when a user asks about a business or place, use this tool to get the information. User can also get business hours, find out if the business is currently open. The tool can provide information about opening hours for all offices, businesses, government services. So one of the issues I had was like for businesses, for example, is it didn't fully understand certain business types. So if it's the local council offices, it couldn't work out that was a place. So I just had to sort of provide more context.
Yeah. Okay. You
And
basically
then,
finding it in the description of a
yes.
tool as to what this tool is about so that the agent knows when it should be calling which particular tool.
Yes. And like for events, I mean it's very sort of simple. It's just asking about events, what's on in Devonport about specific events, and then giving an example like when's the next farmers market on.
Nice. Nice. Got it. And what's the description
Uh,
for the travel guide? Like the third one?
So travel guide, this one's a bit more complex because this handles all the questions that it's not a place or an event. So we have quite a bit of data in our travel guides. I think we have over 60 or 70 travel guides, and that's where the majority of the data it comes from, which isn't either a place or an event.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's how that's structured. How it works out the dates, I think I can go the import properties. Yeah, so I've got a time frame here, so it's actually putting the period, time frame in of the time period, and then that just gets sent back to the function, and the function sort of pre-programmed to handle all those different types of time frames. So you could say next week or in 2 weeks' time, and it would be able to work it out. Yeah, if you want a specific date, or you can then give it a specific date, and it will understand that. It's got price filters, and then it can even let you know about to be announced sort of like event dates.
Hmm. We do
Uh,
one question, Scott, from
yeah.
in here, which is um, I mean, two parts to the question. The first part is what led you to choose Superbase as the platform to store knowledge about Devonport? And then how much technical literacy would you say is needed to set up Superbase and the edge functions?
I chose Superbase. There wasn't one main reason. It was more of I was looking for a database, and Superbase sort of came up first in the search results, to be honest. It's been a very big learning experience going from something like a WordPress to building a custom app and structuring everything.
Right.
The functions, I mean, from a technical level, you have to be pretty good at it. I mean, there's AI, it can help you build functions, and that's quite good. So, I mean, you with a bit of work, yeah, like anyone could do it. It just depends on do you want to know how to do it before you go and start, or do you want to learn as you go?
Makes sense.
Like for me, I'm always self-learning, so it's always a bit of a experience when I go and do a project.
Got it. But what I can see, like you mentioned it in one of the slides as well, which is the version one of Mersey, which was an agent connected to a knowledge tool or a knowledge base. It was messy. It was the data, the structure of the data itself was like textual data coming in from your website, and the agent didn't know which information it should be referring to. And now that you've structured this data in a really easy to consume format, the quality of the responses are much better. So I mean, would you say it's a lot to do with just how you've been able to structure the data and then how the agent is able to access this data itself?
Yes, I think that's the biggest thing. It's if you don't get your databases correct, and if you don't have your data structured, I mean, it's bad data. And if you're putting bad data into a chatbot, the output's just going to be bad data. So you really need to get your data sorted. I mean, it's if it's a simple, say if it's a simple website, I mean, like that's going to have some issues, but I think it's a lot better. It's acceptable. But when you go into a more complex environment where you've got lots of different data types, and then you're mixing them all together, that's when you start having issues. But I think for majority of people, probably a web database is a good way to go, unless you start noticing that your data is really bad when it comes to the outputs.
Hmm.
But I suppose depending what your use case is, that will sort of depend on how you build it.
Right. In your case, I also feel that there was a need for a very structured data because you have a type, right? For instance, the places, because there are businesses going on your website and uploading their business information. That's a very structured set of data that you were anyways getting. You're now storing it properly and giving it or making it easily accessible for the agent as well. Similarly for the events, and like these are like specific data types for you.
So yeah, so by having it structured, I mean, the data is always going to be in the same format, so it's easy to predict. When I was on the previous website, um, this data structure was terrible. It was a drag and drop page builder, so all the data is stored in the same sort of like column in a table.
Yeah.
So it just, yeah, that wasn't going to work trying to structure it. So it really, again, depends on your actual use case and how you're building your site. I mean, if you've just got a simple website, do you really need to build all your databases up if it's just if you're just going to scrape your text anyway? But if you're then having to have like businesses submitting information can get confused easy, then you're probably better off building a database, separate databases.
We've got one more question, which is related to the database itself, which is
Yep.
how's the data in Superbase being updated? Are they updated regularly? For example, for opening hours and event dates, are they updated automatically or manually by someone?
So I'll should be logged on to this. So I've actually got a business portal, and this is a self-help business portal for businesses to actually submit their own events and submit their own listings, and then they can then edit listings as well. So I will go through and I'll make sure certain listings are correct.
Yeah.
But really, I'm starting to encourage businesses to actually get involved and submit their listings so they have control over it. So that's sort of like the business opening hours, images, all that stuff can be actually modified by the businesses.
Got it. So very, very structured data, which is actually coming in from the business itself, and they could eventually be updating this
Yeah.
themselves. And if it gets updated or
I'm
gets updated in the
I'm
uh,
looking at sending a slightly if they don't update their information after 6 months, an email sort of pushing them along to go on and update if there's any changes.
yeah.
Because I know from experience, and especially even like big tourism data warehouses like we've got in Australia, businesses just don't want to update their data. They sign up and then they forget about it. I actually do manual checks, random checks on the businesses, and then update the data as I see it's changed.
Right. And similarly for the events, like if someone is
Uh,
hosting an event, they could just go in somewhere and
yes.
add that information.
So we've got a event management um, platform as well. So events can be added,
Nice.
changed. Yeah. So it's very similar to the business one.
Right. Okay. So all of this information is technically here. Yeah.
Yeah. Get back this. Yeah, I think I mentioned this. So the benefits of the migration to our site into having our own databases, well, each database can have its own API, and the APIs vary because places only need simple like date calculations, where events have a bit more in demand or have a bit more advanced sort of like calculations behind them. Um, and the data, yeah, so the data is pre-processed before being provided to TARS. So I know that the data going to TARS is actually good quality data, which I couldn't before.
Got it. I mean,
Going into, yep,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was like going into the sort of lessons learned through my chatbot building process of Mersey. Start small and simple. So you don't, I wouldn't recommend walking into a chatbot building project and saying, I'm going to have my chatbot do all this stuff, make it overly complicated. I started off simple with a simple web knowledge base. And as I started watching and seeing how it was being utilized, I then started looking at, well, can we make this more advanced? What do I need? And to get to the point where the knowledge base was actually sort of like usable, or to get to a point where I could have a database in that, it was actually about over 100 hours of work gone into rebuilding the entire system, building the databases, building the website and platform. So it is a big time investment that you sort of need to a big time investment if you're going to go through that. So start small and simple and work your way up. Build a prompt with the knowledge that you'll regularly need to fine tune. Now, I think I told you this before 6 months ago when I said that I regularly read the chat logs and I'm regularly changing that prompt so I can give it more sort of like detailed information to tell it this is how you answer a question, or this is how you shouldn't answer a question, or this is a definition of a word. I had an issue with, you'd say, where can I park with my caravan? And it would be telling them where to go to a caravan park versus an actual parking spot where they could park their caravan in the CBD. Yeah. So I had to provide more prompting, making sure the data is clean and good quality and readable for the chatbots. I do know some services which will scan your website. It will then, TARS does this too, but the same like web knowledge base that scans it and then puts it into a readable format, which is good. But again, like APIs are probably the way to go if you've got a lot of content. Yeah, if possible, silo your information into separate tables. Just provides more structure and give your chatbot a personality, because no one wants to see a little generic chatbot or robot icon. Um, I hired a designer to do my icon for my chatbot
Oh,
and
really?
gave it yes.
Oh,
I'm bought design, so I paid a designer to actually go and design my sort of lighthouse icon. I
it,
wanted to give it a bit more personality.
yeah, this looks pretty good. Yeah.
And then branding it to the city too, which I liked, and I think a lot of people have sort of really liked that visit my site, that it's a little lighthouse with a face.
And I see a lot of businesses don't um, pay attention to these small details which you have looked into, which is giving giving a certain name to your chatbot or your agent, giving a certain personality, giving a good image, because you know, there are people landing on your website, and what if no one just clicks on that thing, right?
Yeah.
All your effort has gone into vain because nobody is even clicking and interacting with this agent right now, because you've just not made it like there's no sort of stimulus to click on that thing on the bottom left and the
Yeah.
bottom right, and you got to make people click on that thing first, only then they would see some value by interacting with it, right? So I mean, there are very, very small nuances what you've shared today, which make a lot of sense, and sort of best practices for bot building or agent building. Yeah.
So we can go to questions now if there's any questions.
I do have a few myself, and I do see
Yeah.
some questions here. One thing I want to touch upon again is you moved from a V1 to a V2 of the agent, right? Of Mersey. How did you figure out what was broken? And you've spoken earlier a little bit in terms of the you going manually and looking at the chat logs, but that's very sort of anecdotal information in terms of you would see a certain interaction and then do it. We don't do a really, really great job in terms of helping you do that right now, but
Yeah.
as a user, um, or as a builder, an agent builder yourself, or a bot builder, you're managing this agent. What is it? What are the what is your thought process of seeing if something is like even with V2, right? How do you know if something is working or not? And this goes back to more of testing and in evaluating the performance of your agent itself.
Yeah.
How are you doing that currently? And in your from your thought process or from your experience, what would be good ways to evaluate? Because I mean, I don't know if you have certain metrics as well. Like, what are your metrics to evaluate if an agent or a bot is doing well, and how you could be making it better? Because looking at chat logs is one thing, but then is there some, like some metric or something that you could look at and be like, hey, this is getting better every day? Like, have you been able to think through something in that direction?
So when it comes to actually working out how successful, like version one, it's just essentially reading the chat logs. But if I read something and I'm not getting the answer, which I think the user wants, and the questions are usually pretty direct, even though there are some really weird ones that come through. Like that, I don't consider that successful. If it's something which sort of answers a question, but it doesn't really, I don't consider that successful too. Um, there isn't really well, I don't believe there's a way to view upvotes and downvotes for responses, which would be helpful. So for me, it was mainly about just reading those responses and looking at from an angle of a user. Also, one of the reasons why I went to V2 was I wanted a new app a new app for the Devonport City Guide, and the decision was I was trying to manage two different website and an app with two different databases. So the decision was to build one unified platform, and then when I had that, I thought, well, can I integrate Mersey directly into it? So that's where the actual project came from, to integrate Mersey into the chat. So so it wasn't more about, if I wasn't doing this project, because the data wasn't accessible, version 2 probably wouldn't have happened. But because I was already in that database and structuring that, and version 2 came along actually shortly after I had the actually, I think I seen a preview you put up on Discord shortly during sort of this process of finishing the database.
Got it. So I think the trigger for you was you had like a more neater database to play around with, and you were like, hey, let's just use better data rather than compared to what you were using in V1. That makes sense. I mean, because I mean, I
So
was asking this question because we've been thinking about it as well as to how do we because the metrics that people care about could also be different. Like for instance, in your case, it's about getting a really good response and helping the user out with their questions. Now, how do we evaluate if it's a good response and get to that and help you understand if your agent is getting better with more data or cleaner data and the updates that you're making to it.
I
So that
think there's a potential that AI could be used in this, because in my job at the Devonport City Council, we've got a chatbot, and I download hundreds of chat logs, and I use AI because I don't want to read through all of them. I use AI to actually score the chatbot in its accuracy. Yeah. And I've got a certain number of conditions that I use. So I think there is room to use AI to actually give a sort of a generalized success score.
True, true. Yeah. I mean, there's ways to get there, but I was just curious as to what and how you've been going about it. I do have one more question. I mean, which is primarily related to the DB again, the database again, which
Yeah.
is going into a bit of technical side. Would be great to see how the data is saved in the DB and the actually data format in the Superbase itself. Want to understand this to see how agents actually pull the data from the database. I don't know if you could do that, but that's one of the questions in here.
I probably need some time to prepare for that, so probably
Yeah,
not now, but maybe later.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I could figure that piece out. Yeah. So think those are all the questions I have in the Q&A at the moment. Um, and I think we've covered a lot of it. If you want to, I mean, I think it'll be good for you if you want to share, the place where you've written the whole custom tool as well. I think that was interesting because I was going through that before the webinar, and I found it interesting in terms of how you've made like these three custom tools and written the entire um, you know um, um, API specs for those. Yeah, I mean something like this. Yeah, I think this is where you've configured the entire schema for and written um, custom tools. I mean, we have like I think 300 odd tools, but you've made like custom tools to make all of this happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of work to get this bit working. We're getting the API set up. But once I had the API set up and getting this schema done, then it was quite simple to hook it all up.
Yeah. What was your experience? Because I think, before we were jumping in, one of the engineers in our team was like, "Hey, you should ask Scott as to how was his experience of building a custom tool, because this is like the first version of the custom tool building process on our platform in the 2.0 TAS 2.0 platform. So just curious as to what was your experience of building a custom tool here and just making all of these things work because still, like I said, it's still very, very early days for us, and the whole industry as such, to be making something as complex as this.
Once had the API set up and the actual schema generated in the format you needed. I mean, it was pretty easy just to paste it in and just connect it up and it worked.
Okay.
It wasn't really any additional sort of any additional changes I had to make.
And once you connected it to the agent as well, it wasn't that it wasn't working or all of
No,
those.
it just sort of worked straight out of a box.
Nice,
So
nice.
once you had that sort of the schema all set up and authorization set up, yeah, it just worked.
Great, great. I mean, I was chatting with the new the agent as well on the website, and I was getting like pretty good responses. And I was like, how is it? Because even when we do implementations um, for the customers, we
Yeah,
face all of these challenges that you're facing today, which is about the sanity of the data itself, the how clean the data is, because we're literally just I mean, in most of the cases, we end up using the knowledge base as a tool and connecting it to an agent and doing that because
yeah.
obviously our customers haven't made like custom tools and custom APIs for us to be consuming all that information, right? So we have to rely on knowledge base, and we face the same challenges that you were talking about today. Uh, Awesome. So I think we're pretty much on time. We're like just 3 minutes left for the webinar, and I don't think we have any more questions. So I think we could wrap this up.
To
Um,
have one final question, which is, can you describe how you got this schema and how did you figure it out?
Actually, to get the schema, I used a bit of AI to work that out. So then I hadn't used that schema format before, so I just for my API documentation, I made into AI to actually get it to generate it.
so you would just put in the API spec or the documentation and just be like, hey, can you generate the YAML file for that?
Yeah. And
Okay,
that did it after about 3 attempts. And then once I had the first attempt done, I could easily replicate it.
got it.
I think it was a late night project when I was setting that up. I was more seeing if it was possible, and yeah, so that a lot of my work I do is like late night project.
Great, great, great. But thank you so much, Scott. I mean, super helpful. Great to see the progress you've made as well over the last 6 months. Like I said, I mean, like I was saying before our this webinar, you're one of the very few users, who I've seen making custom tools and going deep into writing these custom tools and then connecting with the agent and also figuring all of this out, even though we don't have a lot of documentation, well-written documentation, because I think we're building a lot, but we haven't been able to write documentation at the same pace, and you've been able to just figure it out all by yourself. So that's great, and that's great to see as well that you found it easy to just build all of this all by yourself. So yeah, and thank you so much for taking time to be doing this, after your work, to be sharing what you've been learning, over the last few months.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't think we have any more questions, so we could wrap this up. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a lot.